Great.
Hi, this is the part where I pause awkwardly because I need to make sure that it's actually streaming. Is it working? It's working!
Hey,
Yay!
Cool.
I had a little hiccup with Hannah last week.
I see.
Hi everyone! Welcome to Ramblin' Down Rainbow Road. I'm your host Grace Bowen, and my guest today is Jacob Mason-Macklin.
Hi.
Do you want to talk about your work while I go live on Instagram so we could try to get some viewers?
Sure. I'm a painter originally from Columbus, Ohio. I'm based out in New York now. I do collage, painting, drawing, installation, but primarily I'm a portrait painter. And so, yeah, I guess for the short of it, that's a good starting point. Painter. Yeah.
Wait, did I show one of your works at Joint Crux that was like a huge... Was that... No, that was somebody else, my bad.
Yeah.
That was a dick move on my part.
It's okay. No.
Oh well.
I remember that show. It was not me. But I do remember that was a good turnout.
Yeah,
and that was
a
at
cool
Mint,
show.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember that.
That was a good
Actually,
time.
I think that's when I first met you. Actually,
Aww.
yeah.
What an inaccurate first impression.
When you have to be super curated. Yeah.
No, I mean just like I've never done anything that's had that ever turned out ever in my life again.
Right.
So it's like that was a fluke in my mind.
I see. Yeah, those things are. It's weird because I remember there's like a brief moment in time where I was like, had to step in like a spokesperson role, kind of like that, or like a curating role for like Boost Mobile at Mint and Ease, and I was doing artist talks, and it was just like a weird feeling, people knowing me strictly from my art practice.
Dude, it's not great.
No, it's not, because like the work is bigger than yourself, because I'm human, like we're all flawed, and I'm not really so serious as my work would make me seem. The work is serious, I take it seriously, but like me as a person, I'm not so staunch. And I think it's interesting when people come up to me from an art standpoint and they recognize me for the work I do, and they're like, just like the kind of way they speak to me, it's just kind of, it still hits my ear wrong. It's nice, but it's just like, wow, you really think very highly of me, so I gotta kind of get used to that. We all have different perceptions of ourselves. So, yeah, it happened like, I got into town Sunday for the holidays, and it happened when I was at Dirty Frank's.
Oh no.
And I was outside waiting for my friends to finish up paying the bill, and this gentleman came up. He was like, "You're Jacob Mason-Macklin, such and such, and you did this and that." And I was like, yeah, that's me. And he was like, "Your work is fantastic. Like, I really like admire." And I was like, "Well, I appreciate it. Thank you very much." And like, it's weird for me to have to put on that face.
Yeah.
Because I'm just not that kind of guy, if you know me. I'm not like that person that's gonna be like, "Thank you very much. I appreciate."
Yeah.
But I guess that's
Yeah, I like still get that from Mint, and it is really annoying.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good thing. It just kind of proves that Mint became, like, I guess what I was mentioning, it just became something larger than its parts, you know? Because I still think Mint is super impactful, and there hasn't really been anything like it since in the city. I don't know if there will be, but TBD.
I don't know either without funding. There are some new spaces opening up too. Also, I don't want to sound like a total brat. Like, Mint was probably the most formative experience of my life, and I'm very thankful to have had it, and I'm very thankful to have been able to like contribute to the art community here and like outside. Yeah. But it's also just like a little bit like, I think the nice thing about being in New York was, and like the work that I was able to do was like being around fame and enough to like for it to be normal to me, and for enough for it to just like learn that like everyone shits and everyone eats, and like there's no need to like treat people like they're more than human, because we're all human. Yeah,
that's a lesson I learned too in New York, and it sounds really weird to say, but you kind of normalize seeing people that are, I guess, of merit in society. Like, you just, I mean, like...
But, and then it's like, what does that mean?
Exactly. Like, I work as an art handler in New York City,
Mm-hmm.
in Chelsea, and I get to speak to artists that, like, I would do essays about in college.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
They're normal as shit people, and, like, it just, I don't know, like, the mystique wore off, which was really important. But back to Mint, yeah, I think that time of, like, 2012 to 2017, where Skylab was still pushing that really queer, punky, like, alternative noise space, and
like, music-wise?
Yeah, and CJ had a really funny show. He had the video where he was just
Oh, God. I think that was the first time I went to Skylab, and I was like, this is insane.
No, and that's exactly
Didn't Quest
it.
perform in that show?
Yeah, and I didn't know CJ quite then. I've known CJ for some time now, but I didn't know him quite then. But he was covered in mud, and I was...
And he had, like, yellow contacts in.
Right, and I was, at the time, just not...
Don't mind me,
I was just not ready. I just wasn't ready. Like, I guess that's the best way I can put it. I just didn't understand, and I wasn't ready for that kind of work. Because I was still very much into representational painting. I still felt like painting had a merit system. Like, there's a certain kind of painting to achieve, and that's how you'll be the great... Like, I still felt like there's a greatest painter.
Like, accuracy in rendering, is that...
Yeah, and that's a pretty inchoate, that's a pretty young idea, or a set of ideals to have, is like, oh, if I can just tightly render this the best, or most accurately depict it, or whatever, then, you know, it's far surpassing... like a Picasso, and Picasso is such a weak term, so I don't really like him, but like a more abstract painting. But rendering is an abstract term because it just is, I don't know, if you're depicting something abstract, how do you not render it?
Yeah.
It just seems like how we render a face is much like how we render brushstrokes, and how we are meticulous about composition and everything. But anyway, I wasn't ready for CJ in that show, and I wasn't ready for Skylab, but I knew that I wanted to go back. I knew that I felt like I needed to see what was going on, because it was so different. And that was that kind of pushed.
That's, like, so romantic.
It is. And it's not there anymore. But that's okay, because the young people, I talk like I'm old, but the kids now who still have those spaces, like, Skylab's still around, and the guys that run it are great, and they're friends of mine. And, you know, there just has to be revolutions. It's just things are always in cycles, and there'll be something for the young kids to latch onto. You know, I was 17, 18, like, punk, little hardcore, skate rat adjacent graph kid, and that was transformative for me. And so I think that, you know, there'll come a time where the weirdos come back out and make it fun. But Mint was definitely transformative too. That was my goal. I only had a few goals in Columbus as an artist, and having a show at Mint was one of them. Because the space was just it. You know, it was just so industrial, it was gritty, and it took me going to Yale Norfolk. And I came back and I spoke to Marissa, and she was like, hey, well, oddly enough, I think Eric Mack was supposed to have something at Mint, which is funny because I know Eric Mack now, and just how he's kind of skyrocketed into a young career. But it's just funny to think that, you know, he had to drop off for some reason back in September of 2016, and Marissa was like, hey, do you want a group show? I was like, fuck yeah, I want a group show. And I was with 3 of the people that ended up being in it, and I asked them on the spot. I was like, are you guys ready to do that? And that was probably besides the show in Manhattan, it's my favorite show I've ever been a part of. It's so special. So, but...
Did you feel like you needed to, like, go to Yale Norfolk for yourself, or to, like, feel validated enough to, like, feel worthy of having a show?
I think so. So how it happened was I was doing a studio visit with my friend Tyler,
Mm-hmm.
and his professor at the time was an alumni. And I was just giving Tyler, we were just in the studio having like a crit, him and Tyler and I. And his teacher came in and he was listening on how I was giving feedback. And he was like, let me check out your studio, because he wasn't my professor. And this was junior year. And he checked out my studio and the work that I was doing, which was, we can get into that a little later. But he was like, I know you're not my student, but I want you to do something for me. I want you to apply to this. And I'm going to give you a recommendation because that's the only way. Like, only alumni or teachers that are affiliated with the program can give the rec. And he was like, super rigorous. It's very exclusive. It's hard to get into. But I think you should try it. And I was like, okay. I had no idea what it was. I sent out my portfolio. I wrote this really like not sentimental, what's the word I want? Very bleeding heart letter of intent of what was so important about art to me at the time. And on my birthday, the day before my 21st birthday, I got a call and they said, there was the director, his name's Sam Messer. He's no longer at Yale, but he ran the program for 20 some odd years. And he called me and he was like, hey, is this Jake? I was like, yeah, it's Jake. And he was like, well, I'm calling you to say you didn't get it. And I was like, he was like, no, I'm kidding. And he was like,
what a jerk.
I know. And I was like, oh my God. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? He was like, yeah. No, totally. And I was like, okay, cool. And then from then, I still didn't know what to expect. So it really wasn't, I guess in short, it really wasn't, I go there and I'm totally floored. I'm around, I mean, you would assume really, creme de, like top-notch critical thinking, like young people that are kind of with it, you would think. But then it wasn't that at all. Not to say that these
because I was going to say, like, I wouldn't fucking assume anything.
No.
Yeah.
But that was me at 20 and
That's
freshly
real.
21. And I guess I have to, be honest about that. But it totally wasn't that. And it wasn't to say that the kids weren't amazing. Every person I went to that residency with is amazing. And I still have really close relationships with a good few of them. But it just, it was a program that essentially prepared you for Yale grad school.
Mm-hmm.
And so they tore you down and they built you up, and those really heavy, harsh critiques. They're like psyching you, like psychoanalyzing you. And it was a super weird, transformative time in my life, like my family and my personal life.
Mm-hmm.
And then getting my art kind of torn down that way. I wasn't used to that critique at CCAD, which was probably the best for me. But I think to answer the original question, I don't know what I did it for. And I didn't know for a long time what I did it for. But I think now I did it to see what it was like to get out of the bubble I was in. See how people who are almost indexically linked to...
Ooh, what does indexically mean?
So like one-to-one. They're just...
Like related to index?
Yeah, so I guess, I say to like, they're one-off from the market or the contemporary fine art world in New York, because Yale is a pipeline. Can be. If you so choose. You have to make the decision that you want to be in the market. To be in the market. That's the only way. Because you have to play the game. But, yeah, so essentially it just fucked me up for a year and a half. And then I left college and I had to start doing my own work for me, and then I started realizing what it meant, and it was super special.
That's good.
It was probably one of the best things I ever did for myself. And I recommend anyone who's in college who can apply, because there's a lot of universities that are eligible.
Mm-hmm.
Try it. Mm-hmm. You have to be a junior. It's super selective. You have to be a junior in college.
Oh, okay.
That's the only thing. But from then my work just kept that level of criticality that I didn't think it had before. And I think that's what's really special. It was a super pivot point for me. But how I feel about Yale doesn't correlate to me liking the residency. I don't know how I feel about Yale as an institution. It's okay.
I'm gonna cut Instagram.
Okay.
Bye. But yeah, because my concern, it sounded like I was afraid that you were saying that you felt like you had to prove yourself in order to like participate in Mint, and that was like not at all what we wanted.
Oh no.
Okay.
No, I guess what my thing was. No, it was just a goal for me because I felt like Mint was where I wanted my. I feel like that's where my work felt most correct. Like, I think a lot of people, a lot of young artists and a lot of artists in general need to consider that how you display your work is half the battle. It is so important. You know, making the work is imperative, of course. Like, making the work is what we do. But, you know, where it sits and how it situates itself within a space and all the politics of a space and all the narrative and nuance and people and everything, it can either hurt the work or it can make the work just shoot up and the show becomes that much more special. So I never wanted, I wanted to show at Skylab, I wanted to show at Roy G. Biv, and I never did. I did the one-off, I did the new schools where they would show you somewhere else. But I've kind of, I'm not saying I've given up on that. I mean, I would still love to show in my hometown. I don't have any pretenses about showing in Columbus anymore. But Mint was it because it was cool. It was punk as shit. It was DIY, and I was like, I felt that was me. I was a punk kid, and I felt like people would understand my work, and like how you and Mara and Marissa and CJ, just kind of like the artists you selected and worked with.
We weren't the only people who curated shows, just
right.
for the record. But.
I know there's more people at Mint, but I was closest with the four.
Yeah.
And there's, I know that Jake was a part of it as well, and I got to work with Jake at the Wax, which was really cool.
Nice.
But like I remember seeing a Devin Kinney show, and it was just.
Oh yeah, he did like spoken word stuff?
Yeah, and he did it to like the manifesto of this former Marine that just went postal on cops.
Yeah.
And it was just super raw, and I was like, this is weird, but I like this. And then there was this, there were a few other shows I met, and I was just like, this is what I want to do. And I've always had dreams of that space. I was like, what can I do to this space?
Yeah.
And when I finally got my opportunity, you know, I think that, I think we did the best we could, and I think that it worked out well. It was a really great turnout, which was super important. And I mean, I just think that the symbiosis of what was happening in America and what was happening in the art world, it's still happening, you know, unfortunately, but I think it reached a fever pitch in my consciousness because I was that age, and it has been happening long before me. For centuries before me, and it will unfortunately likely happen while I'm still alive here and after. Who's to say? Maybe we can break down that walls. But I just think that it was just a symbiosis of people were receptive to seeing a point of view that wasn't their own, and they wanted to see young black and artists of color talk about it, and we wanted to hold no punches were pulled. It was as aggressive as we wanted it to be, and I don't necessarily feel so aggressive now. And I think my only regret, which is a big one, is that it was only men. And I think that very casually I just decided that I was going to put people that I knew in and that were friends of mine and that I could collaborate with, and they all were boys. But I didn't think about it until much later. I was like, wow, what that show really could have been if there were women, if there were people that didn't identify as men, like just different perspectives, because being a black woman, being a woman of color, being a gender fluid, a queer person, or even especially a queer person of color, like that dynamic and that conversation is just so much more nuanced and appropriate and needed and valid. And like, I appreciate the show for what it was, but I think if I had the chance to do it again, I would kick out I would just like the diversity, because I've met more people. So if I ever did a Boost Mobile too, I was 21.
So like.
Right.
Yeah.
Youth is a funny thing. I just felt like it needed to be what it needed to be at the time, but I guess that's the great thing about growing older, is you realize what you can do better. Mm-hmm. And that conversation is still important to have, but it's who can participate is really important. And it just doesn't have to be, you know, a masculine, cis, hetero conversation about how we feel about black men. And yeah, but yeah, that was Boost Mobile, and it was cool. And shouts out to Mint.
It was super cool.
Always love Mint. Honorary member, they say. I was never.
Oh sure.
But I didn't put in the funding to be an actual member.
Whatever. Do you want to play this game?
Let's play the game. Okay. I see.
Yeah. It's hard. I'm going to start at 100. Have you played this before, this version of this game?
Not this version. I used to play on the DS.
We haven't done a practice round yet. Press these bumpers. And then, I guess we're ready.
Okay. I usually played with Yoshi. And I can select Yoshi like that. Oh, okay. It's that button. Oh, I can choose my color.
Whoa. I'm going to start with Toadette.
Okay.
Do. And then if you press on yours, it's like a little minus button, but you can see the stats.
Oh, cool. What did I want? Oh, handling is super important. I was always big on handling. I think I might have been a control freak when I was a kid.
I mean, whatever you need to cope.
Honestly, more than you know. Right?
Which we don't have to get into, but...
No, I mean, that's not really off. I was actually... The reason why I stayed up so late was I was reconnecting... Because I haven't been home in like 7 months. And I was just reconnecting with a friend of mine, one of my best friends. And we just stayed up until like 6 in the morning, and then I had to go take my mother to work so she could have the car. But we were just talking about change and growth and cycles, and it really resonated because that's a lot of what the show I'm working on is about, the cycles of growth and changing. And so yeah, that's never off limits. I think that's a conversation that needs not be taboo anymore.
I meant more around your personal life, but yeah.
Well, yeah, personal life is one thing, and streaming it live is...
Can I interrupt you for a second? So you use, like, this bumper to hop and do sweet kicks and flips, and you can get, like, boosts doing that, and you can also control it the way you drift using your joystick, and then you use the left bumper to use your items. That's, like, the biggest thing, is controlling your sweet tricks and flips.
Oh, I see. Okay.
But anyway, growth and change. That sounds like a really cathartic conversation to have with an old friend, too.
Oh, yeah. It's super important, because I think that as we get older, we need to lose our cohabitation with shame. Shame allows us to be really...
I love that phrase.
Yeah. I mean, we go to bed with shame constantly, and it just makes you miserable. It's made me miserable, and a lot of people self-destruct, and some people lash out, and some people... I don't know, it's just... Shame is just a really evil, bitter, like, poison in the body. And so we were just talking about how do we manifest that, and I'm really boring at this game. I don't do any cool stuff.
This is not a problem at all. You can like play it. A lot of people can't. You're in 4th place. That's great.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I was really into this when I was younger. I used to have a red DS, and
Was it the first DS?
it was one of the first versions. It was in 2005.
That was not a bad system.
It was not a bad system. RIP. My sister broke it.
Oh.
Shouts out to Hannah. I love you. But yeah. Anyway, just I think having that conversation with your friends, especially when there's this bullshit like you still can't talk about your problems, and it's just like silliness.
Just because someone isn't like secure enough with themselves to be able to talk about it?
I think there's a lot of contributing. Yeah, I mean that's pretty much what it boils down to, but with a little bit more compassion, I guess we can say they haven't been that lane of observation or healing hasn't been offered to them. You know, I think a lot of people go without help because they feel like no one listens, and they feel like no one gives a shit or understands. I'm trying to switch up my language because I realized how, you know, we talk to ourselves and about our problems really changes it. Damn. Alright, 4th place is a little mediocre. That's okay.
Nothing wrong with mediocre. You'll get there.
Yeah. This is your shit though. This is your game.
I put way too many hours into this game.
That's okay.
I had a dream last night. I was like shopping for something, or I was like, I wanted to buy something. I was broke. I was like, I'm broke in my dreams too. This sucks. Like,
oh, God.
I can't escape it.
Yeah.
And I think I was almost lucid dreaming, so I could almost recognize what I was doing, but I was just like,
yeah.
fuck, man.
That's fine. Like, real talk. Oh, God. I was making the decision of how long can I procrastinate on buying this fucking China bus ticket back to New York? And just the $80 is just killing me. But,
is that what you were talking about on the phone about earlier?
yeah, I was talking to Joanne about buying a ticket. She's in Cincinnati visiting hometown old friends who now live in Cincinnati, Ohio. Which is,
Sorry, I have a cold.
It's okay. I think I'm coming off of or in the midst of something, and it's like dwindling down. I think the bus got me sick because it's a seedy, nasty bus, and those are nasty
and like
people.
Concentration of people.
Yeah, the guys that run it are nasty people. I don't like them, and I.
It sounds like you have like specific grievances.
Yeah, they were being really racist.
Oh, okay.
The last time I was on it, and I can't do anything about this next trip, but because it's too short notice, I have to take it back.
Yeah.
But I'm definitely going to support China Bus.
That's good.
If I can. They're just pricks, and I don't know. It's so weird seeing minorities in New York have that heat for one another.
How do you mean?
There's just a rift between, you know, it's just anti-blackness. Like there's this young black man who was upset with the I Like Bus company because he had to order 2 tickets, and then they were saying he needed to order another one because they were expired, and they're just trying to like finesse him out of some money when usually there's just a late fee or just a small fee. But he was saying, I'm not getting off the bus. I've already paid. You know I've paid. You're just trying to get more money out of me. And they called the police on him. And we had to stop. We were stationed on Canal Street for like an hour past our departure time. And literally all the police did was they talked to him for 3 minutes. What seemed like 3 minutes. And they turned around and asked the rest of the bus, hey, should we let him on or should we take him home? And everyone was like, are you fucking kidding me? I was like, let's go. Keep him on. He paid for it. Let him sit down. And then after all was said and done, the bus driver goes out of his way to go to the back of the bus where this gentleman was seated, and he says, you're never riding my bus again.
Damn.
And we're just like, yo, drive the fucking bus. We need to go. So that shit is like, just those micro, I guess those are...
That is not a micro.
That's a macro, yeah. I was about to say, it seems so much more bigger than a micro. There's just like that aggressive bullshit racism, and it's just internalized, and then it becomes nuanced to New York City. I really suck.
It's hard to talk and play too. Sometimes.
Yeah, but you got it down.
Well, you're talking all the time.
Yeah, if I'm talking too much, let me know.
No. That's the point.
Okay. I'll get there. Oh, Wario beat me? Yeah, that's trash.
I think Wario low-key like kicks ass in this game for some reason.
Well, yeah, he's just such a weird, unimportant character in a lot of the other Mario series that he should just be badass at like running people over and being mischievous.
Did you ever play WarioWare?
Mm-mm.
Oh my god, that was one of the best games ever. It was like a whole bunch of mini games, and they were like so weird and like funny and gross, and like I think only one WarioWare game ever came out, and it's like a cult classic, and I don't know why Nintendo's never made another one. Like everyone wants it.
I've never heard of it.
Oh, it's so much fun. I think it was for like the Game Boy. I think I played it on the Game Boy Advance or something.
I see. Oh, I mean, this is a super basic game, but I was really into Smash Bros.
Well, yeah. See, that's like a good franchise to I don't know. I feel like WarioWare could...
I played with Ness in Smash Bros.
Have you played the new Smash?
No.
Dude, the Inkling characters are OP, man. They're so much fun.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you should try that out.
I should. I have to find friends that have video game consoles now.
Oh, so, yeah, that's hard.
I don't even have a TV, so...
That's the way to live, though.
Yeah, I mean, it was just kind of like, it's like a weird natural abstinence from TV. Just didn't afford a TV, didn't have one already.
Mm-hmm.
So, but we do watch Netflix, of course. Not of course, but...
What else is up? Your art handling, that's chill. Have you seen anyone from Columbus recently, maybe?
Yeah, I see a few people from CCAD.
That's cool.
And it's a very, small talk conversation, but that's...
Well, how are you, like, you're, more than a year in New York, right? How are you, like, adjusting in general?
Oh, I think I'm adjusted as well as I'm gonna be for right now, but, I mean, I like the city, I love it, and I hate it, and I have to give a balanced report. You know, it's not really that... It's a very hard city to live in, but it also has such great rewards, and I'm really happy. It's helped me grow a lot, and I think that like discomfort has been super beneficial, though a little painful.
I also drifted off you. Did you see that?
No. But yeah. So I like New York. I think it's a departure from what I'm used to, and I'm happy I got out of the Midwest bubble. I don't know how long I'll be there, but I'm just, I'm there at least for another 9 months because of my lease. So.
Do you think you want to move that soon, or?
No, it took me a year to get out of the whirlwind that is just how the energy of the city moves through you. So I'm thinking about staying a little longer. It'd be kind of a travesty if I just made the option to leave, Because it would feel like a weird dream. Feels like I was just like in like some weird war zone for a year, and then I'm like have to debrief back into the Midwest.
That's been my life for the past 6 months.
I see.
Is debriefing.
It does take a toll. It's a psychological thing. I was on the bus, and it took me until third's better. It took me until like getting into rural Pennsylvania where I realized that I finally wasn't underneath buildings. wasn't surrounded by skyscrapers.
Gross.
Yeah, and just that and prison's like such a heavy word for it, but that psychological effect of feeling entrenched in infrastructure, and
yeah,
it does a weird thing. It like buries you a little bit. But Joanne always says you just need to get out of the city more. I was like, well, yeah.
Not to mention literally like navigating life underground.
Oh yeah. You're a little tunnel rat most of your
Yeah.
day. How often we forget. Yeah, but New York is great. I like where I live. My job is my job, and money is needed. Ah, that's how. Okay, that's how you accelerate.
Wait, you weren't wait, hold on. Let me check something too. All right, you're good. Zoom. Yeah, I left because I was thinking about jumping in front of trains every day.
That's a great reason to leave.
I was like, you know what, this is not gonna work out.
No, that's a great reason to leave, and I'm glad you had the foresight to understand that was not a good place to stay.
But I'm glad I was there when I was like, I always wanted to move there and try it out. I'm glad I didn't go in college, so I had time to like become a person before being around a lot of different kinds of pressure.
Yes.
And I'm glad I went when I was like 25 because like that I could feel my frontal lobes fusing in my brain, and that like, and my judgment became way different, and my like reasoning became way more just like even keeled and stuff.
Yeah. And
like that bout of depression was something that didn't like consume me. It was just like something I knew I had to deal with, like literally like an illness, and I was like, well, I know what I need to do to get better, so I'm gonna do that.
Yes.
And it was like so what's the word for like feeling stronger within yourself?
Oh, it was feeling strong within yourself.
Yeah.
Resilience.
Yeah.
I don't know. Fortitude, volition.
Yeah. That I like didn't have to be crippled by it that time.
Yeah, that's the thing, is there's always a way out, and
well, not for depression necessarily, but
no. Well, unfortunately, you can only treat symptoms.
Yeah.
I mean, I struggle with that constantly, and I wouldn't. I would be lying if I said that for months I wasn't extremely depressed when I first moved. It's really dirty, and there's not. You have to run to the sun. You know, you're not gonna get your natural vitamin D, and the city's just aggressive. You see a lot of people living very harsh, hard lives, and it's just aggressive and go, and no one really. But the thing is, like, you can participate more than you think. Like, you can go your whole day seeing thousands of people and not saying a word, or you can decide to talk to a few people on the train or at a bar, but there's a lot of isolation that's relatively
it's hard for people in the Midwest to break out of it too.
Yeah, we're so used to being fucking nice.
Or like leaving strangers alone in public.
Yes. I was driving up your street and like 3 people like waved to me in their car. Because, like, you know, when you have to pass by someone, I think it's just like a Midwestern thing. You're like, oh, thanks, with the hand. Oops. And it's just like, I won one. Cool. Cool.
Alright. Now we're really playing this video game.
Alright. But yeah, it's just, I don't know, it's just a different kind of switch. I do like, well, I don't have to do all the niceties that I do here, but I do think that, I don't know, I don't think New York is right for everybody, and I don't think it's like the mecca that everyone should migrate to.
Yeah, the city's changed. Like, people who were from New York, who I worked with, when I told them I was moving, they were like, yeah, just get out of here. You don't need to be here. Like,
No.
The city's not what it used to be if you're not enjoying it. Like,
Yeah, if you don't, that's the thing, if you don't enjoy it, there's a difference between, like, adjusting and not enjoying it at a particular time, or just knowing that this is not your speed, and like you got, I guess, figuring that, and that takes a while. I think that's what the first year's for, is whether you really like it or not. You know, whether it's really worth all the money you spend, because it is expensive. It's worth all the hardship. Yeah, if the juice is worth the squeeze, because, you know, Toad. Yeah, I don't know. Feels good though.
I didn't realize how much I appreciated just like chilling.
Yeah.
Until I was living there, like I don't know. Like having time to just like not think and to like muse over something.
Yep.
And I feel that now in my like creative practice.
Mm.
Do you want to play this one because it has Rainbow Road? There are a couple Rainbow Roads.
We gotta do Rainbow Road. It's the namesake. It's the diminutive title of this.
Oh, actually, let's do this one. This looks fun.
Alright, so Rainbow Road's the finale.
Yeah, but we can play more if we want to. Because, like, also, I think being in Mint, I felt a lot of pressure to, like, make physical works.
Totally.
And I've slowly been, like, letting go of that.
Yeah.
And also, being in New York, I realized that, like, I need time to, like, chew over ideas and feelings and stuff and figuring out how to, like, convey those ideas and feelings.
Yeah.
And now I'm, like, more interested in writing, although I haven't done any to speak of. Or just like projects like this that are more about the moment than they are about like the tangible result of the moment or something. But like I think if I hadn't gotten out of my bubble here and been forced to like sort of confront myself in a different context creatively by being in New York, then I still would be like trying to do the same stuff I was trying to do before.
Yep.
On top of just like feeling way more comfortable about like hustling and networking and stuff like that.
Yep.
But like working freelance in New York was fucking hard too. Because like my schedule wasn't consistent. I like couldn't focus on self-care.
No, and you have to win the others and
yeah. And so I feel like if I went back I would have to be in grad school or like have a 9-to-5 or some sort of like stability and consistency like that.
I have an aversion to full-time. I had an opportunity to work full-time and I didn't take it because it just seemed like such a slog. And also freelance is hard because of the fucking checks. You need people to be consistent.
Yeah.
So a lot of people aren't.
Thankfully, most people I worked with were consistent. So
Yeah.
I wasn't like... I was like making... Like, I lived more comfortably in New York than I've ever lived on my own in Columbus.
Yep. Well, yeah, you know, you make more money and there's just more access.
But I like wouldn't go out. So like I didn't spend money on going... Like, it was like you had to either drink heavily or do drugs heavily to like have fun. And you had to like go to fucking clubs or parties. And I was like, this is not my idea of fun. I like just chilling.
Well, it's just not... Yeah, and that's... Yeah, you get pretty burnt out quickly on the bar scene. Because, yeah, it's... For what it is, it's great. You know, you should experience being out in Brooklyn and on Broadway. And you should experience being on the Lower East Side and Chinatown. And even Uptown. Has a lot of great spots. But, you know, for the most part, it's a one-trick pony, and I don't think any establishment that you have to be inebriated to function or enjoy is really that fun. Because I remember for a while I was just getting drunk because I was uncomfortable being at the bar, sober. Like I was just uncomfortable just being there in general. And so I was like, well, fuck it, might as well drink, and also smoke cigarettes, and also smoke pot, and...
Dude, I was smoking weed every night to be able to like eat and sleep because I was so anxious all the time that like I couldn't do either of those.
It's a decompressor.
I so messed up.
And I didn't really smoke pot in Columbus.
Same.
I would partake here and now, but in New York it just becomes so regular thing to do because what else would you...
Or like it's quasi-legal.
It is. It's in this weird gray zone. But also like, fuck, man, the city is just... I don't think people understand how much that energy moves you until it moves through you. What I mean by that is like, it will move you every which way it wants to, and you're kind of at the whim of the pace until you can figure out how you can walk your own speed and let it pass through you. But in that time, you're super anxious, you're go, 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 it's very hectic. I just felt like I was on for months at a time. And, you know, I guess smoking was a good way of turning off, but I don't necessarily want to use that as a coping...
Yeah, no way, dude.
Because that doesn't make pot enjoyable. You know, when you're just saying, like, oh, I'm only doing it to sleep or get my appetite back, it's just like, well, yeah, you're depressed. And we need to, you know, find a way to not just self-medicate.
Like, now I don't smoke at all because I always get, like, socially weird and don't end up having fun.
Yes.
And,
Thanks.
and I just don't really like drinking that much right now because it never seems worth the calories. Or, like, alcohol's a low-key poison, so, like, it's never worth... It's never worth, like, the feeling that comes with it.
Alcohol is a very, very, very high-key poison. I despise it, but I partake, so I guess there's some self-love issues that I need to address. Yeah. I'm also...
it's also hard socially, like, anywhere to not drink.
Yeah.
It's weird to, like, not have something in your hand, and it's really unfortunate. Like, I have friends who I rant with all the time about how, like, it's so hard to be sober.
Yep. My buddy is, who I look up to quite a bit, is sober, and I've been talking to him about getting there because drug dependency just doesn't seem chic or, like, romantic anymore. Mm-hmm. Like, that's a larger conversation. Is like, why the fuck do people insist on artists being the most unstable, unhealthy?
Oh my god, tell me about it, dude!
No wonder there's so much, like bullshit.
No wonder, like, nobody supports us. Because if everyone thinks that we're just gonna, if they, like, support us on Patreon, we're just gonna spend it on weed. Like, no fucking wonder.
They think we're, like, some weird, crusty fiends, which, hey, you know...
I mean, but we gotta be, though.
Right, where there's, you know, where there's smoke, there's fire. There's a lot of crusty fiends who are artists. But I'm just saying that's just, like, they're masking a mental illness, and, you know, they're self-medicating because we're usually broke. Mm-hmm. And I think that a lot of this manipulative behavior and a lot of this really abusive behavior that happens is because...
That artists do?
Yes. Yeah. Artists are not absolved or immune to...
You just use an excuse that's like, I have a lot of feelings.
Yeah. You cannot say because you're a creative soul and that you are high sensitivity and you feel... you're an empath, you know, that doesn't give you a right to abuse and manipulate.
I'm an empath, so I really know how to hurt people.
Exactly. Same here. I used it for my own gain, and much to the dismay of people I thought I loved. And that's the thing. It's really hard. I think we, as this generation, is just like, fuck. We don't cut each other. Like, how do we speak to each other? It's so crazy. Like, this whole culture of dismissing and public humiliation, did it really do what it needed to do? Is often what I ask, because it just almost collapsed into some weird niche infighting and, like...
Yeah, especially, like, with liberals.
Yeah, I think that calling out the powers that be and calling in and going upward with your gripe and keeping people accountable is, on paper, really righteous and really, you know, a justifiable act. But what it comes, you know, it's turned into manipulative people being holier than thou and, like, really self-righteous, and it lost a lot of its grit and its bite and its power because people wanted to be right and correct.
Like, used to be punks would curb stomp Nazis, and now
they're just gonna go on Twitter and say they're trash, and then when a Nazi responds, they're not gonna do anything.
Yeah, or if there's, like, a Nazi in their hometown who's harassing people, they're like...
Well, I will say, considering, I will say that there are still tons of punk kids, straight edge kids that will stomp the shit out of Nazis. They're still about it.
I don't know enough straight edge kids, so
they're still about it. The hardcore community's strong still. There's a lot of people about it. But I'm saying, but call-out culture is kind of whack to me.
Mm-hmm.
I used to partake, and we grow and we get older.
But like, look at you. Like, someone would have given you a lot of flack when you were like 21 or 22 for curating a show speaking for the experiences of like Black and people of color, and not including any women or like non-binary people. But and then today you're like, yeah, that was fucked up, and I regret that. Like,
yeah, I came to that conclusion on my own. No one pulled my arm and said, Jake, you're like misogynist or you're transphobic. Which, yeah, like people need to come to that realization, and I don't need someone like trying to label me what I am for just growing. And I don't know, we just need to let we're just so fucked, and like we're just in competition with each other. And through the forces that be, it's just like there's so much shit. I don't know.
I'd like to think that as like in the queer community, I think there's definitely a thing where like young queers act a lot differently than like older queers, and it's just because like young queers can have a lot of like self-righteousness and can like express their insecurities by like sort of bullying other people
easily.
But then the older queers, you know, grow up and realize that's not helpful and not healthy, and are burned by their friends for like the same bullshit. And so I'm hoping that as like more of us grow up and realize how not helpful that crap is, then like the culture generally will grow out of it. Yeah,
like at a certain point, like I don't know, like my whole thing was I stopped fucking with it when they started saying that like being mixed isn't really being Black, and like I was just like, yo, shut the fuck up, because there's a certain point where you're not really about liberation or being inclusive. You're just trying to, you have this victim mentality as a coping mechanism, and you're trying to absolve yourself of being problematic, which we think of as like the end all be. Yeah, it's
when
like
it's just like you're a person. You're flawed. It's okay to be problematic.
Yeah,
like as long as you're working.
How much of a wet blanket, no personality, like white toast motherfucker do you have to be the most correct, PC?
Yeah.
Like it's just like, come on, dog. Like and that's the thing, is like that's why a lot of ID politic work is really fucking boring. Sorry to say, and I know that it's super personal and anecdotal, but a lot of it is regurgitating memes, which are a little bit more radical because they're a lot more accessible, or they're just like really low-hanging fruit, surface level things that aren't that personal.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I just wish that we didn't feel the need to be right, and we just felt the need to be ourselves, and that would be enough.
Yeah.
But that's kind of like but I'm saying that not as I'm better than anybody, but I'm saying that because I was totally a proponent of what I was talking about that I don't like. I was that person.
Yeah, I was too. I was like such an unpleasant person to be around my family for like a few years in my early 20s, and then like I was just like, this isn't fun. No. Like, I love my family and I love spending time with them, but like the past few years have not been fun.
No, and who's like, making it not fun is
And I think that realization also came when I like posted something on Facebook about something weird about being raised as a girl, and like a couple like radical queers, one of whom I lived with, were like, hey, that language is transphobic, like saying raised as a girl is transphobic, and I'm like, okay, like, yeah, my upbringing was transphobic.
Yeah,
like,
that's just what it was, yeah.
That's what, like, and they're like, okay, but you shouldn't say that because it excludes people, and I'm like,
no, but that's...
You can't tell me what I could say about my life.
Right.
Like,
that's the thing. With you. Because we didn't live unproblematic lives. That's why we are the way we are. Like, a lot of the reason... I mean, that's just what I'm saying. It's like, why are you policing how I'm talking about my experience, and why does my experience have to be mutated into this correct language? Like, you know, it's just not that pretty, and it's not that clean and neat. Like, I didn't know anything about transphobia when I was 5 or 6. Mm-hmm. Or I didn't know anything really about what it meant to be racist or be in a system like that, or what race relations were like when I was a young kid.
Yeah.
And so my experiences growing up were extremely problematic, and thusly, I mean, I'm straight. I'm a light-skinned Black man. Like, I have privilege. Mm-hmm. I have some privileges that a lot of people don't. Yeah. And, like, for me to kind of you know, that's just, being problematic is, I guess, more human to an extent.
Yeah.
I don't think you should be malicious, and I don't think that I think that whatever platform you have, you should just use it to better your community, whatever community that is. Unless you're some inbred redneck fuck, then I don't want to hear any white pride shit.
Yeah.
I've seen so much white pride shit since I've been back here. Sorry to change intro.
No.
I was visiting my father. My father lives in a special care facility. Mm-hmm. And one of the patients, it was this really old, blobby, skin sack in a wheelchair, redneck, inbred motherfucker. And he had a swastika on his arm.
Oh, Christ.
But his nurse was black. And it's just so flaccid, that hate. Because he was probably like some country boy, biker, racist fuck, you know? And just to imagine the choices he made in his life to debilitate his body, he was in his 50s, which is really crazy.
Yeah.
Just the, you know, that hate, that much problematicness eats away at you and it consumes you.
I wonder if conflating like problematicness and hate and bigotry might be counterproductive.
Maybe. I think that, well, I guess what I mean to say is, I think it's funny and fuck him. And I asked my dad who he was, and my dad in his very country ass he took the right train to Idiotsville. Because my dad's white, and so he didn't quite. He does that. That was his condemnation. He was like, "This is a fucking idiot." But yeah, I guess. I don't think I should conflate being problematic with hate or bigotry. I think problematic is. What's the problem? I guess is. My question, if I'm problematic, it's to whom am I problem to?
I like to think about it as like people's base operating systems can be different from how they, like the coding language they use to express that operating system in a way.
Yeah.
So like my partner can be really problematic and he can say stuff that I'm like, whoa, like what are we really talking about here? It's rare, but sometimes it happens. But he's like one of the most like kind, empathetic people I know who's gone through like a really big growth period and revolution in his life, and I appreciate him for like everything he tried. Like he misgenders me literally all the time. And
does he do the she, her? Okay.
Yeah, and like he says girlfriend all the time, and it like sometimes it bothers me, but generally it doesn't bother me because like he's the first person I've ever dated who I know like sees me as queer and as trans and not as like a girl who's like just a little bit quirky. And like I can tell the difference like deep down, even though his language like doesn't express it. And conversely, I know a lot of like politically correct liberals who like just deep down give you that feeling of like untrustworthiness because like their operating system is probably like self-motivated, like self-interested, and it's all a facade to facilitate their like social currency and worth and shit, and it's like this weird twisted thing.
But you know, I like to shoot people bail. You know, I understand that is super transparent and that totally happened and happens in a lot of communities, that there are predators in any community or sociopaths or people who use or they proselytize and they corral people in the current sweeping moment for personal gain. And I'm often thinking like that like just kind of how funny and pervasive that behavior is, because I feel like this culture, this counterculture that we were, is it even a counterculture? I guess this culture that we're, you know, promoting and living through in the last 5 years, for us, I know this ID politics is decades old, but it's funny how it's gotten commodified. Like pussy hats, don't grab the pussy, Black Lives Matter. Like, yo, it's a t-shirt, and like, What?
I'm holding back a lot of stuff right now.
Yeah, that shit is so corny to me. Like, I get it.
And white women are like the white like second wave feminism is the fucking worst about it, and it's infuriating.
Yeah, and it's just I get that, but I think letting you talk about it is more appropriate. Because like I said, my perspective is likely riddled and mingled with some internalized misogyny and bias towards men.
I mean, like, same with white second wave feminine. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's super complicated, and I'm around it a lot in my day-to-day life in a way that I don't really want to talk about on the internet. But
that's okay.
We can talk about it later.
Sure.
But commodification and, like, participation in capitalism and, like, erasure of, like, non-binary or, like, assumptions of a very specific experience are, like, even just, like I have a friend who is a mother who is an artist, a working artist, and she was expressing, like, frustration over other women parent artists who, like, make work about the experience of being a parent through their art, but, like, in one of those ways that's, like, a sweeping statement on, like, a general group of people and not, like, that specific narrative thing about their own lives.
Yeah.
And my friend is frustrated because, like, they're not talking about artists who've, like, lost kids or artists who are, like, single parents or I mean, to say, like, women who raise kids who, like, maybe you're raising kids who aren't your own, like, biologically, or maybe you're raising kids, like, within the community of an anarchist art collective, and you have your weird 25-year-old roommate, like, moving in and trying to hang out with your 12-year-old kid, but your 25-year-old roommate doesn't know how to connect with that 12-year-old kid because they remember when they were 12 and everything was terrible and awkward.
Yeah.
It's a specific thing, but...
Yeah, it seems like you're speaking from a little bit of a personal. I could maybe connect the dots to that story, but no need.
Or like raising neurodivergent kids is like, I know some neurodivergent kids who, like, can have a hard time, and being around, like, other adults who don't, like, I'm so thankful to have been, like, close friends with enough people whose brains work in, like, a different way from the general population or the way we assume brains work, that, like, I'm thankful that I can connect with younger people who don't yet have the experience of, like, speaking for themselves on how their brain works and advocating for themselves on that. And, like children. No child really has the self-introspection to talk about how their brain works, but...
Absolutely not.
But yeah, I don't know.
Well, maybe to the...
That was a meandering train of thought.
That's okay. I mean, that's what it's for. It's just a conversation.
You want to keep playing a game?
Sure.
Do you have to get out of here at any point?
I can stay for a little bit longer. Are we... This is a live stream. This doesn't get edited, does it?
Nah.
Okay, cool.
Makes it easy for me.
I see. No, I can stay for a little bit longer. There's no issue. I do have to take a nap, though, because I don't know.
Okay, maybe we'll finish this tournament. This might be the last race.
That's okay. Yeah, I think it is. Rainbow Road, how fitting.
Oh, here we are.
But, yeah, I understand, and I think that's a good segue into the show on January 19th that I'm having in Ferguson, Missouri.
Oh, cool.
At the Bermuda Project. Nice plug, I just had to do it.
Yeah, do it.
You guys should check it out. Like, I'm just thinking about how I'm making kind of... I was just thinking, like, what does it mean to be apologetic without being an asshole? Or being...
Whoa, what?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Yeah. So, there's a difference between, I think that, or I guess more articulately, how can I not police myself in what I say and how I feel, but also how can I have the foresight to understand that the difference between, I guess, what I'm allowed to unapologetically feel and say, and what am I saying that is just kind of ignorant or uninformed, Like, I don't feel the need that I don't want to. I feel like there's this really like, let me not mince words. It's just like people feel they're scared to say what the fuck they want to say and feel how they want to feel because they're worried that it's the wrong thing to say and do. And I'm just like, well, that's what makes you you. But I think that it just takes some growth. Like, I go to therapy once a week, and I think that that's a lot of growth that allows me to rid myself of. I police myself of, like, why am I having these thoughts and why am I feeling this way? And I recognize to the best of my ability sometimes whether they're helpful or not. And
I mean, is practicing mindfulness really policing oneself?
No, not at all. But, well, yes, it is in a way, but it doesn't seem as pejorative as when someone's like policing you. It seems like it's you're doing something wrong and they have to like correct you or enforce like a law that you're breaking.
They know you actually are.
Right.
Yeah.
But mindfulness is just it's compassionate though. That's the thing. I don't think policing is compassionate. I don't think the police are compassionate. And I don't think that this call-out culture is compassionate. Mm-hmm. And if you're really trying to change somebody, you have to be compassionate. Mm-hmm. You can't just be a disciplinarian or an enforcer, because that's why most of us are angsty little fucks, is because there's probably an enforcer or a disciplinarian in our life, and there's a lack of compassion for how we felt.
Yeah.
And that's why most children rebel and act the way they do. So I think that mindfulness is just a compassionate, emotional calibrating and understanding, like, you're feeling this way and these thoughts are kind of like wild, or you're like feeling a certain way about someone or something. Is it valid? Does it have stock? You know?
Yeah.
And I just don't feel the need to, like, if I feel a certain kind of way about something, I'm gonna say it, you know?
Yeah. And I feel like it speaks a lot to, like, how fucked up our culture is in general, that it's hard for us to tell the difference between like bigotry and unintentional ignorance or something. You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
Like compassion has to be the root of the thing, but
it
like
has to be.
But it's so fucked up how, like, it's hard. I feel like when I talk about this, I feel like I'm a teenager again, and I'm suppressing my feelings, and it's hard for me to be able to express something that should be easy to express.
Can I ask you a question?
What?
Do you think we feel that way because it'll fuck up the brand? Bringing it back to capitalism. Do you think... Yeah. Honestly, I think that a lot of people are so apprehensive to speaking their mind for fear of getting ousted or called out because it will fuck up the reputation. It's that public humiliation and that public...
I mean, yeah,
shaming.
For sure, but
it'll fuck up the brand.
I'm trying to get more at, like, the gaslighting of heteronormative capitalist patriarchy, and how it's hard for us to, like, mince out what we're actually talking about, because I think in large part because it feels like a gut thing, and because we're not taught empathy and compassion, like, or, like, women are, but, like, other people aren't, and so because, like, for example, men aren't, it's not part of the, like, the way we talk about things generally.
Yeah, men
as a
have
culture.
to learn it a lot.
Yeah. So, like, that's what I'm getting at. Is that it's like, I don't know. It's, like, clear that we're, as a culture, swinging too far in the overcorrecting area, and I think now that people like us are having a conversation where we're like, the root of it is compassion.
Yeah, it'll swing back. Like
what fucking Jesus said. And then once we start practicing compassion, then we're gonna, like, come around to some kind of, like...
It always is a pendulum swing. I do think, because correcting someone without compassion means that I don't think you truly love somebody or something if you have no empathy. Mm-hmm. And if you're correcting without empathy, you're correcting lovelessly, and...
That seems like policing, too.
It's total policing, and we all know that policing is just enforcing state violence. So you're trying to enact... violence gets thrown around so flimsily now, but I think that when you lovelessly correct someone, there's an ulterior motive that's malicious, and it's not in the best interest of the person that you're trying to call out. It's like you're just trying to publicly shame them or take a piss at them.
Or to, like, forcefully reinforce a belief that you have and you think is true and right.
How is that different? And honestly, that's such a cliche thing that people who lean extremely right they say like, oh, well, what's the difference between what you're doing and what we do? And it's like, well, there's not really when you think about it, but I like to just very simply extend that you're racist and I am not. How liberals police others is petty and counterproductive, but what you guys want is to kill us. And not liberals. You want to kill people that aren't white. You want to make sure that white supremacy still exists. Like, that's why, you know, I think the argument is funny. Like, what's the difference between black power and white pride? There's not much except one intrinsic critical one. One is about...
just like the keystone of both movements. Yeah.
I don't think any black power person wants, you know, to systematically ensure that there's a black state and that all white people or any non-blacks are...
yeah.
Just... I don't... How do you just make them gone? I don't even know what they want. It's just like... And that rhetoric is so interesting because the funny thing about this conversation is there are so many conduits between extreme left and extreme right. And that's why, and that's how each of them can jab at each other. Because they're not two peas in the same pod. They're diametrically opposed peas.
But if it's a mirror of peas,
right.
I don't know, it still seems to revolve around fundamental flaws in the human condition.
Right.
But, like, one side wants to enact genocide and the other...
doesn't.
No.
And that's the thing is, like, that's a very distinct point is that you're using our rhetoric to promote death and erasure. And we're using our rhetoric to... What are we using our rhetoric for?
Exactly, man.
That's the thing is, like, what is the point of this all now as we move forward and...
Because I can't confidently say that extreme leftists, like, would be comfortable with free speech and free thought. I don't know that.
There's
true.
not... I mean, when you have that... There's like a cog in a lot of young people's minds that stops them from expressing themselves publicly, which is funny because social media is such a pervasive thing. It's so normalized. It's not like MySpace. It's not like early Tumblr. It's not even like early Facebook. It's just, it's so dynamic now. It's not an online diary or a way to connect with friends and family. It's just like people make money off of it. People make businesses off it. People get famous off it. People become there's this notion of celebrity now. And so when you know, this fear that we have that what we say can condemn us forever because someone with enough pull...
That's a thing I'm hoping we're growing out of too.
Yeah, decides that, oh, I disagree with you. I'm going to make sure that your job knows. I'm going to make sure that you don't work anymore because I'm being so... It's just like so hyperbolic and just crazy to me.
Well, like...
I don't know.
This might be a tricky example to pull up, but like, did you see that Neil deGrasse Tyson was... accused of stuff?
Yes.
And like in his apology he was like, here's what happened and here's the conversation we had. And like some people say that it wasn't a real apology, but I appreciated the transparency of it.
Sure.
And like in my mind what I read was like, I'm a creepy old man. And like
he very well could be. He can...
People are gonna be creepy old men.
Well, he can exist. That's the thing is there's a duality. He is a creepy old man. He's also a brilliant scientist. He is same coin.
Yeah.
It's heads and tails. Like, my whole... and I was actually just talking about this the other day, randomly, which is weird that we're bringing up Neil deGrasse Tyson. Like, if he... if those allegations are true, then fuck him. Like, scum of the earth. You don't do that. You don't violate people like that. That's like a... You just don't do that. Rape is the most foul, insidious form of torture and that we've
I
ever...
guess I forgot about that part. I was more thinking of like the PA he worked with.
The PA though, and that's a more nuanced thing, is I don't give a shit until it's either happened it's come forward. Like, my thing is, like, it's not that I don't give a shit, that's crass. It's that I cannot and do not form a strong opinion on the matter. I don't know him. I pray that he is not someone that feels like he can strip people of their power in such a malicious, violent way. And I pray for the alleged victim. And that's the thing is, like, I don't think very many rape allegations are false. And that's a really terrible, terrible, terrible thought that people have, that they think that as many rape cases there are just as many false allegations against men. It's just like, that's just not true. So many women are, you know, violated and just harassed and objectified, so much more than a woman saying, these men raped me, these men touched me, these men did this and that, and it didn't happen to be true. Like, so my whole thing is, I'm rolling with her as far as I'm rolling with the case in general. I believe that those allegations hold water, and until there's something concrete, then, you know, I'll make a final opinion on whether, you know, if he's a rapist, then no, I don't support him. But for now, it's just like, it's so weird how we are in that business. It's so weird that, I don't know. And what is that larger conversation? It's just like, I feel like which is a good thing, we're making this non-separation between the person and what they do. You know, like,
like how people tried to do
like
with
Chris
Woody Allen
Brown.
or something?
Chris Brown or Kanye West or Woody Allen. Like, Woody Allen is a creepy fucking old man. Like, that's incestuous on the...
And his work is about, like, what he does.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like, why would people even try to divorce
Exactly,
him?
and you know, people give Kanye shit because he's a Trump supporter, and he's this manic depressive, and he decides to have a manic episode on Twitter and go crazy, and endorse a president that is just so... I don't have words for him. He's just awful. He's an indictment and a mirror, I guess is a weak analogy, but he's just a reflection of everything big America. Big white America. But I think that, you know, it's like that, what's that question of autobiography? Like, there are so many, you know, like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X were extremely abusive men. I mean, Martin Luther King was adulterous. And
So you think it's good that we acknowledge that, like, our heroes are flawed?
Sure, but it's how we go about it. It's just like, does that take away anything that MLK did? No. But did he hurt his wife and his family? And was he a womanizer? Yeah. That should be taken into account. But he can exist in that duality as a problematic man. As can Malcolm X, who was a pimp, a hustler, and a drug dealer. And, I mean, and what's funny is, which is so silly, is Malcolm X gets so much flack for, he was gay for pay. He was a male prostitute in Boston when he was younger. And people are just like, this staunch black power, like, Muslim, very devout man was gay. Who cares? That takes away nothing from what he did.
Yeah. And we can still, like, look at their strategies and learn from them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I guess, but that's the thing is, like, but when you talk about a rapist, I think that's where your moral code has to, you know, I don't think that Neil deGrasse Tyson or anyone who has rape allegations, I don't think that we can do that duality. And that's why it's so tricky. And that's why it's so much... I lean more towards, if you're a rapist, then you need to be quartered. Fuck you.
Like drawn and quartered?
Yeah, like, fuck you. That is just the most foul thing for any person to do. You know, men's biggest fear in prison is what women's is just a normal thought for women that, or people that identify as women, and people that are susceptible to that. In like, but I don't know. I just feel like that feeding into. It's so weird how I feel like I have to engage with it, and I don't necessarily wish to, and I'm figuring out why I feel so inclined to have an opinion on whether he's a rapist. And I would much rather know that he's a rapist and go from there instead of drawing the lines now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, allegations are allegations, and I tend to think that women don't go out of their way, or victims don't go out of their way. Like, I feel like we have to dispel that notion that people are doing rape allegations for money,
mm-hmm.
or fame, or to dismantle someone's career. Like, that's why Kavanaugh got away with it, because there's a lot of reasons why Kavanaugh got away with it. One of the reasons why Kavanaugh got away with it, I believe, is that we so easily dismiss people, but we don't understand how ludicrous it would be to make up an allegation of that strength.
Well, it's a lack of compassion and empathy, right?
Exactly. It just keeps going back to what we are talking about. It's just like...
And it's frustrating in those cases, because, like, with Anita Hill and what's-her-face recently, and, like, Stormy Daniels.
Yes.
Dr. Blasey Ford. Like, you just need to look at the facts to see how much money they're paying and, like, legal representation and, like, security and stuff to see that it's literally, like, not in their best
They're
interest.
not... Yeah, that's the thing is, like, Blasey Ford is well-to-do, but no one wants that court cost.
Yeah, plus she, like, can't teach right
No,
now.
and she publicly... She made herself not a pariah, but she's not going to have the life she once had after all that's said and done. Never again. Neither will her family. Ever again. And and what ulterior motive would be worth that sacrifice? Money's not everything. And that's what I'm saying. So I guess to my point, I don't know how to feel about the allegations against Neil deGrasse Tyson. If he did it, that is a foul, awful, despicable, deplorable act. And he's a very flawed, has a very flawed and evil side to himself. Mm-hmm. He's also a very brilliant scientist, and his contributions to that field is tremendous. And
to, like, popularizing.
Yeah, science. And to, streamlining it. I can exist, those two thoughts can exist for me. And that's an unbiased thing. It's just like, yeah, he's a brilliant scientist. Doesn't mean I like him, and if he is a rapist, then...
Yeah. And I think it's also worth, like, saying that maybe we'll get further along in, like, taking rape stuff seriously if we also acknowledge that, like, men get raped too, by women, and by men, and, like, by people who are in between.
Yes.
And, like, maybe by addressing the interests of, like, the patriarchs, we might also get further along. Because that's another, like, counterproductive second-wave feminist thing to do, that, not to say that this is what you're doing, but, like, to, like, make rape a women's issue, because it's not.
No, it's not. What's tricky with that, in my opinion, is that it's not a women's issue. There's tons of prison rape, and there's tons of men that get raped and sexually assaulted and molested and harassed and are put in positions where women are sexually imposing on them. Sure. But on that same note, I think leveling it to saying that we should focus on all people getting raped really takes away the steam of how fervent and how just an industry it is to traffic and mutilate and harm women. And, like, when we talk about rape, we cannot not talk about sex work, like sex trafficking and just to say that, oh, well, men get raped too is like, yeah, and I think they can exist on the same.
Can I just side note? I really appreciate how you're like gently correcting me right now. Your way of like speaking and having conversation is delightful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, because I agree with you, and I think that, you're extremely articulate yourself, and like these things we've all been mulling over.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's so interesting how nuanced it all is, and that's really the beauty of it, and which is why it's so ironic that this culture we're in is so black. It can be so black and white.
Mm-hmm.
It can either be I fuck with you or I don't.
Mm-hmm.
And some things can be black and white. Some people can be black and white in some situations, but there's so much gray. And that's the thing is like men suffering from the violation of their entire being due to rape. I know this is a super heavy subject, but that shouldn't be in the shadows. But I think we can just find it just has to be like, I envision it as like a really gentle staircase. Like we have to understand that this is on a level.
Yeah.
And that, because really the issue is that though it is a true, it's not an anomaly per se. It's like it's a regular compared to the millions of women that face that almost mundanely, if I can use that so pungently as a word, like how normalized it is for them to guard themselves and be battle ready, or understand that how very easily they can be trafficked
mm-hmm.
or kidnapped or
mm-hmm.
Like that shit. But we do know that it is predominantly women. Men know that too.
Mm-hmm.
Men's only and incarceration is insane, and our numbers in this country are insane. So the numbers aren't as disparate or divergent as we think, but to the number of men getting raped in prison, or that kind of culture of power, taking power away from somebody. But I just think that we know that as men rape.
Mm-hmm.
That's a thing that has just been a war tactic for centuries, millennia. That it's a tactic of power, and I think the patriarchy, we have to accept responsibility that, since that is an established thing, that there is a patriarchy still, we have to accept responsibility that that's a tactic used to propagate it. You don't rape for I don't know, and I could be out of my breath with this, but I don't necessarily attribute. I think rape is just so much about power that it's hard to. I always feels weird when people label it a sex crime. For me, I understand that it is because of the the reproductive organs and the penetration, and it is a sex act, but it's just so not.
Like, that's not what it's really about.
No, it's no. I can't imagine any pleasure other than rendering someone helpless. But this is a super. We don't have to belabor on the topic.
Yeah.
But yeah. That's just crazy. But also, I guess that segues into a bigger thing of like how we have to. I don't know. We have to just be articulate, and there's no need to be tepid. But I feel like we just have to give
What do you mean articulate?
We have to articulate how we feel about the situation in full. We can't gloss over it and say like, well, this is one way, it can't be another. So many things are nuanced, and so many things are structural. And I think, but we cannot be dishonest with ourselves and hold our tongues for fear of saying the wrong thing to someone.
Oh, we're circling back to PC.
Right.
Yeah.
But, yeah, just to kind of bring it full circle, it's just, I mean, I'm sure I'm saying some things that if someone was listening might hit their ear wrong, or they might say I disagree, or I might be uninformed.
Yeah, I do that all the time.
But I have to take that, because I'm not reading a cue card. I don't have intersectional theory, like, handbook right next to me. I don't know the right things to say. I'm just saying how I feel about those things through lived experiences, and it could be right or wrong, but, like, so what? But on that note, yeah. Let's talk about the work.
Okay.
Yeah. Like I said, the show's in January. And it's my first solo. And it's going to be, yeah. And I want to thank Ryan and Rachel at the Bermuda Project for having me. And I'm excited to finally do it. I've been working on it for almost damn near a year. And it's been so...
Yeah. Is it mostly paintings, or...?
It's painting, drawing, collage, and some sculpture. So I posted the paintings because I think that they're kind of like they're a pivot point. There's only 2 paintings, maybe 3. I haven't finished one yet. But I think that if anyone who's listening has followed my work, I stopped painting for quite some time, and I was doing a lot of found object work, and there's still a lot of found object flyers, and the work is small, as if you remember I used to make really large work. And I just think that I'm feeling like what it's talking about is so much more me, and much like this conversation we're having about how we have to express how we really feel and who we really are unabashedly, is what I really mean by it had to start with how I make my work. And I used to, when I was younger, make work about dark-skinned black people. Because I am black and I identify as black. But I don't get treated the same way. And I realized that where's my voice? Where's my experience as not only someone who's biracial, but someone who's Midwestern? Because my experiences won't be the same across the country or even the world. What does it really mean to be me? And I even stopped looking at myself as what does it mean to me to be black? Because I feel like that's such a weird, now it's such a hard, sweeping, impossible question. Who is it to be you? What does it mean to be you? So I specified it. And what is it, and I started talking about what does it mean to be me and really, what's my relationship to these things? So a lot of it is talking about my relationship to biker culture, country. You know, my father's side are bikers and they're country folk, and what's my relationship to them, and what's my relationship to addiction, and how I've been cycling through addiction and being an addict very young in my life, and how am I visualizing these cycles, and what materials am I using, and what materials feel right for me, and what materials am I collecting that I have an urge to keep and make from. And it was really divergent from the older work because it felt like I needed to make a statement with older work. I needed to make a statement about what it meant to be generalized, what black meant to be right then. It wasn't even necessarily me. Of course the work will always be, that's the beauty of work, it's always honest. It's always who you are, whether you're showing it or not. And I think with this one I took the impetus to really unabashedly use subject matter that is heavy, but I feel a connection to. And so I'm going about it through the subject matter of prisoners and inmates and addicts and criminals and really, I guess, people that have a very polarized opinion of. And I see myself in a lot of these people because I feel a lot of, I felt a connection to what it meant to be a criminal as, you know, my life would dictate through some actions, and what it meant to be imprisoned or incarcerated, and what do those words mean internally, and what does freedom and transcendence mean, and what does addiction and slavery, and what is routine and like this cycle, what does this mean, and how can I visualize it, and why do I see it in these people? And I guess that's really what I'm excited so much about the show is I feel like it's finally me talking to you about what I've been going through. There's no immediate racial agenda. There's no immediate social activation. It's all inherent there. It's all inherent, of course, but it's really more so, it's a very finite, it's from last year to this year, and how I've changed. Like, I moved 3 states. I've adjusted to one of the largest cities in the country, and or the largest city in the country, and I've been doing a lot of soul searching, and finding myself, and stumbling and failing, and succeeding, and then failing again, and just what's that mean? And I think the most important thing is I want people to finally see me for as I am right now, and that connection point will do what I always wanted my older work to do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, of course people connect to ideas, but we connect to each other more.
Mm-hmm.
You can say, I'm for the liberation of all peoples, and I'd be like, yeah, I fuck with that, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But if you show me how you're trying to liberate yourself from whatever shackles you feel you have, and as am I, and we might have the same shackles, that's a symbiosis that's just so, it's just a bond that can't be broken. And I think that's what the power of work is, and that's a really good conversation, is what is a responsibility to an artist to politically engage, and what does it mean? I think this responsibility has been given to artists to be social agents and enact this engagement with politics directly, one-to-one. I'm an activist.
Because we're storytellers?
I don't know. I think it's because of the same reason why anyone feels the need to be socially engaged. Publicly. Performance. Why do people feel the need to perform political engagement and social activity and activism? And what does that have to do with art making? Mm-hmm. And why do we feel like there needs to be, our work can no longer speak about this thing, it must engage? And so I'm being very cryptic, but what I mean by that is a lot of artists of color that I made work with in the last 5 years have battled this question of, can I make work for me, or must I make work for my community that holds my community in a certain light, that tells the story of our history, that tells the story of police brutality, slavery, civil rights, upheaval, poverty, police brutality, if I haven't already said that, but you can say it twice, 3 times. Fuck police brutality. Fuck those slave catcher motherfuckers. Fuck any cop there. Anyway, that responsibility or the burden to kind of stay, and excuse this harsh language, but stay in the slave ship and stay in the quarters and really keep that mentality of aggression and urgency. I must get this to my people. My people must know that I'm about it. I'm about the movement. I'm with that shit. I felt that. But it never felt quite like what I always thought art did. I think that printmaking is a wonderful way to bridge that gap. Zines, poetry, and I do think visual art can do that. But I'm trying to understand that there's been such a saturation, and thusly now a commodification of civil rights images. I don't know if you're aware, but Hank Willis Thomas is getting a couple lawsuits because he's essentially just ripping archival photos of civil rights activists and making retroflective, glitzy photo prints to sell in New York. And they do sell quite a bit. But what is Hank, and I don't mean to use him in this conversation negatively. I like Hank as a person. But what does that work do? Because he's riffing off of a conversation that is already had. It's in textbooks. He's not really bringing light to the civil rights movement. Mm-hmm. It's more exploitative. He's making money off of those images. And we have to understand that the art market is white still. There are a lot of buyers now that aren't white, but it's still predominantly white based in what does that do when you see black bodies in distress and you're selling it and it has a price point and you know that your buyer isn't black. And even if your buyer is black, what is that doing for them? That's a little tangential, but I guess I know that and still in New York, the artists that I talk to that are fabulous painters and so eloquent and beautiful young people are struggling with this burden to address in a positive light their community. And I think that to do that, to make this sweeping blanket of what it means to be black and how to visualize that always comes down to, sadly, tropes. Mm-hmm. That's why the basketballs are so pervasive and so quick and boring. Mm-hmm. And, the fucking hair picks and cotton and, all these things. And also, if you know, I've used all those. Mm-hmm. I've used all those in my work. And I'm not ashamed. Mm-hmm. I've used cotton batting. I've used coal. I've used black paint. I've used hair picks. I've used nooses. I've used basketball, dashiki print. And all these things I thought had an Africanity. Mm-hmm. All these things would become symbolic of black. Mm-hmm. But none of those existed really in my life besides a hair pick. Mm-hmm. I do enjoy basketball, but I don't follow an NBA team. I know LeBron James because I'm from Ohio. And I do know some sports players. I do have a favorite basketball player, and I do like to play but it doesn't dominate my life. Mm-hmm. Like I said, I use hair picks because I have kinky hair, but I never have worn dashiki print, and I would look awfully funny. And I know that you are deciding whether
I'm not gonna speak on that.
It's okay. I would look funny in dashiki. I'm very light skinned. I am almost white passing, if you can't tell. So it would be very funny if I wore dashiki print. And also, I don't know what tribe or country of the giant continent of Africa that dashiki print came from, but I was using it. And I've never been hung or lynched, and that noose is really a really heavy loaded object. Or chicken, watermelon, grease, trash. All these objects have become a part of the visual language, which was really important at the time, like artists like David Hammons and John Outerbridge. And
anymore, like when I talk to art professors who aren't self-interested idiots, like who actually care about their students, I think people are starting to be able to tell that that's something that some people might be working out. And I think I think queer people can do that in art too, is like make tropes and use like ideas around like queer expression and performance that like isn't super specific.
Yes.
And then it becomes a thing of like, does someone like push past that and grow out of it or not?
Do they not?
Because I think we know people who haven't yet.
Yes.
Or who moved to
There's always the fork in the road, and I want to be clear, if I'm not being clear, that there's nothing wrong with using those quick tropes. But
it's like how you use it, right?
Yeah, and it's how you use it and where is your heart. Because I understand being a young student.
Yeah.
And I understand being a young person, and I understand being extremely passionate.
And maybe even having professors who are like, why don't you use those tropes in your work? Because those professors are ignorant, but you might not know that
yet. I don't, and that's the thing is like, I want to dispel this notion that there's a wrong and a right way to make the work you need to make. As long as it's earnest, as long as you're honestly making it, then make whatever the fuck you want and use whatever the fuck you want. But understand and have some criticality and self-reflection to understand that, you know, you're making a generalized statement about your community.
Mm-hmm.
And do you just want to do that to make $1?
Mm-hmm.
And is that really helpful?
Mm-hmm.
Or are you using this as a springboard to begin a journey into self-awareness and self-actualizing through the visual medium?
Mm-hmm.
And I took the route of springboarding.
Mm-hmm.
I realized that I don't really connect to those objects, and I realized that I don't, and you know, this is the not policing myself. I didn't connect to the images of darker skinned black people I was using. I was just merely using them as a symbol for what it meant to be black, and I was overcompensating because I didn't feel like if I felt like I used black people that were my complexion, it wouldn't register. And that's a complete falsehood that I've shed. Thusly, from doing it, I started painting light-skinned black people, and I started using people that looked exactly like me to talk about me and my situation. And there's no issue. It's just, do you want to dig deeper, or do you want to stay in that superficial level? Because either works. You will get paid for basketball art. You will get paid for, you know, work about menstruation. You will get paid for... You'll get paid for
I'd be lying if I said I hadn't thought about it, but thankfully I've never had the money to actually do anything.
You'll get paid for the future is feminist, or, you know, the future is female. You'll get paid for pussy power. You'll get paid for Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
But however that's your means, then that's fine. Whether I, you know, enjoy your work or consume your work is different. And it also doesn't matter. Like, I'm just one person. It really doesn't matter what I think about it. That's just my opinion. And I guess more importantly, I have transitioned away from using identity as the immediate source of my work, and I feel like that's been so liberating. It's not, I keep using the word indexical, it's not one-to-one. I'm not making direct work about being mixed or biracial, but being biracial is inherently in it. I'm making work, honestly, the show is about how I've been struggling with recovery, and how I've been struggling with sobriety, and how I've been struggling to adjust, and I've been so transient, and I've been so everywhere, and I'm growing. It's really about cycles. And all those things encompass that word.
That's a huge thing too. Like, iterative growth should be something in your life, and it's like in recovery or in growing as a person, like, you're always going to slip up and make mistakes.
Yep.
But it's like you just got to keep going in the cycle of like learning from that mistake and like giving yourself tools to try to avoid making the same mistake another time. But you probably will make the same mistake another time, and it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, my therapist says that people often find recovery as this stop start, but it's really just it's such a spectrum. It's such a long game, and because it's supposed to last a lifetime. And most things that take a long time last a lifetime. Most things that you have to take slow. And I guess that's a conversation that I've been wanting to have for a long time. Because I kept my addiction, my drug dependency, a secret.
You don't have to out yourself now.
No, it's fine. I want to. And it's not outing. I'm open about it because there are a lot of people that are drug addicts. And there are a lot of people that are dependent on drugs, and it doesn't have to be heroin. I'm not a heroin addict or a, God forbid, you know, any other hard substance. But you know, nicotine is a drug. It's a really nasty, horrible drug, and it's crippled my dad, and it crippled his dad and his brothers, and hundreds of thousands of people. And there's tons of people that are like me, my age, that I know, that are struggling, and they understand that they have accrued an addiction, and addiction is slavery. It's a mental slavery, and it's killing, and it's just such a awful way to live and measure out your life and your time. and how you're systematically dismantling your body day by day because you feel deprived. And then, you know, I have no shame anymore. And I was extremely ashamed. I was extremely ashamed. And for a while I was ignorant. I didn't know better. I didn't know. I was in art school. I was in college. Everyone smokes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Your professors smoke.
Yeah.
My parents smoked. They're cheap here.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't until I came to New York and I realized, wow, they're very expensive. I can still get loose cigarettes, but smokers look really rough in New York. Smokers everywhere look rough, but in New York it was very jarring for me. Because the city's dirty. It's really foul. You know, like you're smelling fecal matter, you're ingesting those fumes of piss and decay and bodies and decrepitness and dirt and mold and nasty shit, you know? It's just a dirty city. And then you're ingesting these carcinogens. Not just the nicotine. It's the thousands of other shit in it.
Yeah, yeah.
Plus the thousands of shit you're ingesting when you're not smoking. And I was just feeling a noticeable difference in my demeanor. More so than in Ohio. And that's when I was like, oh, well, I have been doing this a long time. Why am I doing this?
Mm-hmm.
How's this affecting me and all this and that? So I guess I'm just saying that, like, you know, if you're struggling with that shit, please, you know, it's okay. Lots of people hide it, and that shame just keeps them in that rut.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I'm trying to transcend it, and I don't know if I have yet. But it's an ongoing process, and that's really what the show, and that's why I feel so personal, is because it's really it's simply just how I see myself through the cycles of trying to get clean and healthy and better for myself. And there's no direct link to any...
But I also feel like that's like a generational thing. Like I feel like most people in our generation are like, we're questioning everything, like why people think and do the things that we were raised to assume were like fine or were normal or whatever, and
Right.
we're like turning everything on its head and like trying to figure out ways to like be better in whatever way that like could mean or manifest. And and so in that way, by, you know, talking about your own personal journey, you're also like talking about these meta themes in culture that like a lot of people can relate to on different levels.
And that's the importance. And I guess I've learned that I am the conduit from, and I can be. And that's where I garner my strength, is I am the conduit between people. And, you know, I'm not saying that I'm like Mother Teresa or anything really important, but I understand that my self-reflection and my ability to visualize it as best as I can at the moment is how I connect and how I help, and it's cathartic for me. And it was so much more, it was just so much more than what I used to make work about. And I was making work about things I'm extremely passionate about still. I'm still passionate about social engagement. I just don't feel the need for my work to do it, because artwork is so niche and it floats around on this spectrum that a lot of people that need it, that need to hear these things, don't see it, and they don't have the access. And we keep trying to do this bullshit, and it's a bullshit, and I'm saying it, and I'm not sorry about it. It's bullshit that we think that the common person, even though that's the wackest term I've ever heard.
Yeah.
We think non-art people will see our work and change their lives. It's just like, no. Our work is so niche. We know what we're doing it for. We need to get rid of that bullshit notion, because it really inhibits our work, and it makes this really pedantic, self-righteous bullshit permeate. You know, you're not doing it for the common person. And I am only saying this because I've said it before, and I lived that life where I thought that I was doing it.
I mean, I'm kind of doing that right now with this project. I'm trying to like deconstruct that and undermine it and like make these conversations accessible, but I might inadvertently be like doing the thing that I speak out against, and it's not until I do it longer, I get more feedback, that I'm gonna like find out what.
And that's fuck it. Keep doing it.
Yeah.
Because you have to do it to learn not to do it, or how to change it. And like, that's the thing, is like, everything is so final. Like, you're a bad person for doing it. It's like, I was the biggest perpetrator of the things I don't want to do anymore.
Mm-hmm.
How do you know that you don't want to do something unless you do it?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just saying that, like, you know, we have to strip this notion that we are these social martyrs,
mm-hmm.
and that we are these voices for the voiceless. I always used to say, I want to be a voice for the people that don't have one. And
especially within, like,
visual art,
the colonialist white institution that the art world is.
God, like, oh God. And that's why I love to look back at myself at that time, and I lose the shame. I have no shame about it anymore. It was a little cringy. I had to work through it.
Yeah.
But I used to say, I want to be a voice for the voiceless. I want to be the voice of my community. And I guess the community, my target audience was black people. And I realized that, like, my voice is so specific and nuanced that there's no way I could speak for anybody else but myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I no longer wish to carry the responsibility of being a voice for the voiceless, because it affected my work so terribly.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so happy that I'm only a voice for me. And if you connect, and we can connect on a deeper level.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to get white people on the wave of black power. That's your responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
It is white people's responsibility to understand the plight of others.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't, it's not on me.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to, you know, we'll go from there. I no longer carry the burden of educating,
mm-hmm.
because I'm educating myself first.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if I see some shit and that's the thing in day-to-day life, especially in New York, because it's fucking crazy. If you hear shit, do something about it if you can. You know, it's day-to-day shit. That's how you socially engage.
Mm-hmm.
I don't socially engage by putting a painting up in a white wall that 30 kids that I already knew from college are going to see and be like, damn, Jake, that's fire. Like, that's really great.
Yeah.
That's not social engagement.
Yeah.
That's self-righteousness.
Yeah.
Social engagement is how you operate in your community day to day. And not just black, white, brown community. Neighborhood. Yeah. How do you exist in your community? Yeah. And how are you a real person? Yeah. Because we're all real people. Fuck the curation on Instagram is one thing. We're all curated on social media. We're all cooler than what we really are. We're all more eloquent. But in real life, we're baristas, or art handlers, or photo editors, or we work at a grocery store, or, you know, we work retail. We're young people. We are just young people in a community. How can you be active within that is really important to me. What do you do? How do you engage? How do you support your businesses? How do you fight the minor injustices that happen all the fucking time? Like, people not swiping people in at the train. Or when you really see a really down and out homeless person or an addict, what do you do? Or when you see someone that needs to get on the bus. Or someone that has a stroller and they have to go down a huge subway, what do you do? And do you support bodegas? Do you support your local businesses? Do you support your friends? Do you buy your friends art?
It's one of the most frustrating things about being broke is I can't donate money and I can't buy art. That's
the thing and money's super important, and you have to find ways to I have a lot of friends that are broke, but they do a lot of PR for their buddies. Yeah. And that's a great way to do it. You know, you just do what you can. But art, I honestly think that art needs to come from a place of internal honesty. And there's just been so much dishonesty and fear. And bless you. Thank you. And you're scared to be yourself. Bless you.
Thank you.
And you're scared to be you. You're scared to be wrong. You want to be right. You want to be liked. Yeah. And I understand wanting, and being liked is the reason why I became a drug addict. Wanting to be acceptable. Wanting to want to belong to a community. Where's the progress? You're going to have to do some shit you don't want to do. And I guess that's where I leave that conversation.
Okay, great, because I really have to go to the bathroom. But this has been amazing and super insightful, and I had high expectations, but you exceeded them, so thank you.
I'm glad I could help.
Thanks for tuning in, y'all.
Goodbye. Make some art.
Check in on your friends. Talk to your neighbors.
talk to a therapist if you can, if you have insurance. If not, you know.
Or there are sources of like
Mm-hmm.
sort of free group therapy community things that you can look into.
Do what you need to do to get right by you.
Yeah.